Good evening, everyone, once again. To help us through the next half hour, two people who invest in individual businesses. Michelle Romanow is the president and co-founder of Clearbank, which has stakes in thousands of e-commerce businesses. And Dave Dodson also invests in individual American businesses and teaches at Stanford. Good evening to both of you. Dave, so many businesses are in a tough place. We were first introduced to you a few weeks ago on CNBC, where you joined us to grade, as the professor that you are, the small business relief program from the government. You weren't too happy, gave it a C- or a D+. There have been some changes, and there is more money in that program right now. Where do you stand? Are you feeling better or worse?
Well, look, more is better. And my biggest complaint with the program prior to that is there just wasn't enough money, with small businesses and small organizations like nonprofits providing 60% of the jobs. They got 17% of the funds. Now, look, about 90% of companies in America have less than 100 employees. We are a small business environment, but we've got a Washington, D.C. that is run by big business. And you look at the people that are advising the administration right now, they're the heads of big banks. They're the heads of big computer companies. They're political consultants. They're not small business owners, and they don't understand what the small business owner is going through. So they put a payroll program in place that says you have to use 3/4 of the money for payroll when the average company only has 50% of their costs with payroll. And what about all the other businesses that might even be, we were talking about brick and mortar companies a minute ago that have more like 25% of their costs are with payroll. So the program does not fit with small business because it's not being designed by small business people.
Dave, this is what we hear from so many small businesses. I mean, luckily, Rianne was able to get her application in, but the whole process has been a little messy.
Well, that's right. And if you're a landscaper or you own a lumber yard, you can't have an online business. I mean, I'm really glad that you have that online business and you have something to fall back on. But my guess is that it's not enough because you have a cost structure that was set up for a different kind of business. And small businesses across the country, we can't just turn on a dime and all of a sudden have a completely different cost structure. And I feel for everything that you're going through and the changes that you're having to try to keep a business going. And the fact that you have been approved for the PPP program and you don't have the money yet, you need it now, is my guess.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's super challenging right now. We spend most of our time, figuring out cost reduction.
Dave Dodson with us from Stanford University, a professor there of entrepreneurship. Dave, how prevalent is the rent forgiveness happening, and how much is it saving some of these small businesses?
Well, I think it's very prevalent. I would say that virtually every company that I've talked to has had to go to their landlord and ask for some forgiveness. And in some cases they get it, some cases they don't. I mean, I really admire the landlord in Los Angeles who was saying that they were doing what they were doing, because it's such a struggle. And of course, they need tenants too in the end. So I understand there's some interest, but I think the landlords are having to carry a disproportionate burden. And by the way, for your chain down in Georgia, I really admire the way you must have been running your business for so long for your landlords to cooperate like they do. I mean, they must really want you as a tenant, which says something about the way you've been running your business thus far. But I'm sort of curious, as you think about, getting through this with zero revenue, which who plans for zero revenue, right? But as you get through zero revenue, what is it going to look like afterwards? And are customer behavior going to change? And are you going to be doing more online classes and more sort of subscription-based services at home?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, listen, we've got 1 million members at Orange Theory here in the United States, and our online classes the last 6 weeks have been a huge success. They've been amazing. Yeah. Our coaches are conducting them. We're getting great responses from members. I do think that's something we're going to continue doing, even if we're 2 years from now back to 100%, a year from now, 90 days from now, whatever it is. We're going to continue doing that because there's a demand there. We know it, and it's great. I think it's wonderful. So I'm hoping that there's a great balance as we go forward between online classes and then also the energy inside of Orange Theory Studio is something we can never replace. And so when we get back to open and having that energy and also having the chance to have online classes, whether you're traveling and can't work out or whatever it is, for that sense of convenience to be able to get that workout in is pretty awesome.
What I've noticed when companies have had distress like this, and nothing like what you're having, which is zero revenue, the most common mistake that business owners make is you went into business and business owners are optimistic. And that optimism is usually your friend. But when times are tough, it's your enemy. And people don't cut their costs enough and they don't plan for the worst case scenario. So I would just say, guard against that optimism that made you want to be an entrepreneur and open up a business. That may be your enemy right now because things could be tough for quite a few months. And I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah, I take some flack from my wife, but I always hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So it really is a matter of right now. Like I said, the savings, we have a pretty decent runway, so I feel good about that. And, trying to figure out what the other side of this looks like. But, we kind of came out swinging immediately once we closed in terms of ratcheting down expenses, loan deferments. Our bank, we work with Webster Bank. They've been great working with us on stuff like that. Plus, the EIDL loan, the PPP loan that came through. So, all things considered, I feel pretty good right now with everything that's going on. And, some of the other small business owners I speak to, some are feeling better than others. But all things considered, I'm feeling pretty good, which is kind of new as of this week. But that's kind of where we're at.
Get to the other side. We've been telling everybody it's about liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. And of course, you have inventory and you have employees and you've got brick and mortar, and anything that you can do to hang on to cash. And one advantage you have that other companies don't have is you have inventory that you can work with. So I would say anything you can to stay alive with liquidity is the name of the game.
Yeah, because of the nature of my business, everything we make everything is made to order. So we are not, we do not have a lot of stock. So the problem is we're still getting orders, but those have to just be backlogged until we can open up again. I don't have a ton of stock. We're trying to sell what we can. But the challenge with manufacturing is that we've lost these 2 months and we'll never get it back.
And the PPP loan is not enough to keep your employees active for manufacturing the furniture?
Well, we are restricted. We must stay at home, so we can't manufacture.
And finally, Dave Dodson, it's been somewhat encouraging to hear a lot of these small business owners that we talked to on this program have either received their PPP funding from the government or are awaiting it. Is that going to stem the tide of losses for small businesses and for employment across America?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, as I said earlier, this is about getting to the other side. And with the PPP loan, if they can get the loans and they can get to the front of the line, that's what they need to survive. And we've told everybody, I don't care if you're on your hands when you cross the finish line, get across the finish line.
We want to thank all of our businesses for joining us, all the small business owners tonight. Especially thanks to you two, Dave Dodson and Michelle Romanow, for sticking with me.